Okay, right. So as you join, if you'd like to click on the link in the chat, and you can pop your attendance in there, pop your student number in there, and that way I've got a record of who's actually attended, which would be great. And we'll be sending out all the slides and the recording afterwards. So thanks for coming along to getting started with your assignment. Do feel free to ask questions along the way. I've got a lot to get through, but hopefully I can manage to do some chat and questions along the way. You can put your student IDs in the link that I've just posted, but Crystal and Joyce, I'll just take yours there, that's fine, but anyone else, pop it in that link, that'd be great. Okay, so first of all I want to say kaya, which is Wajak Noongar language for hello and welcome. So thanks for coming along, everybody. I have the privilege of living and working on Wajak land, which is around the main Perth area, and it's a beautiful place, and I'd like to extend my gratitude and respect to the traditional custodians and their elders for their connection to and their care of land here. We're currently in Muckaroo season, which is the first winter season, so it's the coldest and rainiest time of the year. In fact, it's probably the only rain we'll get all year in Perth. Hopefully we'll be lucky and get some in some of the other months as well. So feel free when you ask questions to use the chat or to turn on your mic, and it's up to you. And if you're new to Blackboard, again, if you need help finding the chat or anything, just let me know. So, oh, Gerard, you've got a question? Yeah, and you can put your hand up. If you go down the bottom of the screen, there's a little raise hand there. So, yeah. Gerard, did you...
Yeah, I just want to know where to access the chat, that's all.
Okay, so on the screen, on the bottom right, there's a little purple tab with two little white arrows. Click on that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then you go to everyone in the chat, and you'll see all of the chat there.
Okay, so you want my student number, is that right?
Yeah, so where I've put, where it's Amanda Smith.
Oh, yeah, on the...
click on that blue link.
Yep.
And you should be able to put your ID in there.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Cool, okay. So we're going to talk firstly obviously about understanding the task that is set for you with your assessment, and how to ideas around developing ideas, structuring it, and some of the resources and support that we've got that might be able to help you. So first of all, if you'd like to, this one's probably easier in the chat. If you want to type in the chat, what sorts of assessments do you have this semester? So this is written assessment. So do you have an essay? Maybe it's an argumentative essay. Maybe it's a reflective essay. Do you have a case study? Do you have a report? What sort of assessment types have you got this semester? Give you a moment to type that into the chat. A couple of case studies. Essay, reflective study, good. Oh, a drawing. We'll be looking at the essay rather than the drawing today, Crystal. That sounds fun though, an environmental drawing. Quite a few reflections. Yep, oh, she's got a poster. Learning journal. Oh wow, Dee's got a learning journal, report, a test, and an exercise. Written story, great. Report, case study, essay, and a presentation. Report and a portfolio. Essays, reports, and posters. Great, lots of different ones there. Thanks for sharing. That written story one's interesting, Jodie. Hopefully this will help you with the ideas around getting started, and perhaps some of the, I think some of the structure will probably fit in with the story there. And Mike's got qualitative and quantitative studies, so that sounds like something that might turn into a report as well. So hopefully everyone is going to get something out of this today. The structure we're looking at is mainly an essay, but I'll show you where you can find the structures of all the other types of assessments, and the basic structure with the introduction and the body and stuff. That's all relevant to all types of assessments when you're writing assessments, including reports and case studies and things. So hopefully everyone will get a little something out of this. Okay. So let's start with the beginning, a very good place to start. Assignment question. So when we talk about the assignment question, that's the whole task related to your assignment. And usually you have to do 3 steps with it. You have to identify the key concepts, so the main ideas or the topics. Now that's going to be relevant to creative writing as well. You really need to focus in on what exactly it is that you're being asked to do. And in these questions, these assignment questions, you want to identify the directive verbs and understand limitations and parameters. So I think we're all probably understand that what identifying the key concepts means, but what do we mean by the directive verbs? Can anyone write me a directive verb in the chat? Think about an assignment question. What might be a directive verb? So it's directing you to do something. Yeah, analyze, that's a good one. Thanks, Annika. So things like analyze, explore, summarize, compare, contrast, all these kind of things. Great, thanks for that. And secondly, the limitations and parameters. What might be a limitation or a parameter that you have in one of your assignment questions? That's more about how to do it. Yeah, the word limit. Things like the word limit, how many pages maybe, how many sources that you might need to use. Yeah, discussion's another good directive verb. So yeah, the limitations and parameters, they're really important to think about as well. Things like the formatting, yes. So let's have a little practice at this. So let's look, this is our example assignment. In 1,500 words, explore whether artificial intelligence will ultimately benefit or harm humankind. You must correctly cite and reference at least 5 sources, with at least 3 of these being scholarly journal articles. So can anyone type quickly in the chat or yell out if you want to turn on your mic? What are the key concepts? What are the key concepts in this question? Yep, artificial intelligence is one, and benefits and harm humankind, absolutely. So there are our key concepts. So they're now in purple. What is the directive verb? What do we need to do with regard to this key concept? Explore. Yep, explore is a directive verb. So Jodie's jumped ahead to my next question, which is what are the parameters? So you've got 1,500 words. That's okay. So one of the parameters is 1,500 words. What's another one? 5 sources. Yep, cool.
Correctly cite and use 5 scholarly journal articles.
Yeah, so it has 5. See, this is the trick in this one. It's 5 sources, but at least 3 of them have to be scholarly journal articles. So you don't have to necessarily have 5 scholarly journal articles. You need at least 3 scholarly journal articles, and the other 2 sources could be a book or websites or something else. Yep, or I don't know about a newspaper, Leslie. Sometimes newspaper, it depends what you've been asked in your question and what your unit is. In general, unless you've been asked specifically to write about news articles on your assessment, you might not be using a newspaper article. So yeah, so that's great. So that's just a quick example of how you can unpack your main question. Now there's also, I'm going to keep referring you to our UniSkills website along the way, and I'm just going to share my screen, which is going to take a moment. Hopefully everybody can see the UniSkills screen. Can I just get oh yes, you can see my UniSkills screen. That's good. Okay, cool. Right, so this is UniSkills. This is the Curtin Library Academic Skills online area where you can work through at your own pace, any of these sorts of things. So if I go to assignment, getting started, and then understanding the question, there's a list here of directive verbs and what they mean. So, I mean, obviously you can Google this sort of thing yourself, but this is the list of sort of a lot of the main ones that they use. So that can be quite helpful. And that's also obviously then goes in to talk about some of the other things I've talked about. I'm just going to stop sharing and come back and then share my slides again. Oops. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. My computer is a little bit slow today, so every time I click on something, it takes a moment to actually do what I've asked it to do. Okay. So Leslie, did you have a question, or was that a...
Well, I was just wondering if something was a directive verb that I've been given on my assignment, and I wondered whether I could ask it.
Yeah, what is it? Because that might help everyone. What's the question?
It is multifaceted but not limited to. So in the search for, in answering the assignment, I've got to look at the impacts of anxiety, part 1 and part 2. So that's what I've got to do for part 1. Part 2 is then looking at the article of the person who's written it with anxiety. So part 1 is use multifaceted but not limited to. And I wondered whether that was a directive verb and also what it means. Multifaceted means like a diamond or a gem with many different. It's 4:45. Sorry, many different sides to it. So
can you read me that whole sentence that has the words multifaceted in it?
Whoops. Yes, I can. Oh, I've got it. Sorry. For this question, a well-rounded answer will critically consider 2 different impacts on mental health and or well-being in the form of a discussion of peer-reviewed literature. Aspects of mental health and well-being may include, but are not limited to, multifaceted outcomes.
Okay. Yeah, the directive verb is back at the beginning there, critically, I think it was critically review or critically assess.
2 different impacts, special.
Yeah, so it wants you to, so that's the directive verb. It wants you to critically assess, and then it tells you all the stuff it wants you to critically assess.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so here's another little example of how you might break down a question. Explain why becoming an independent learner is important to be successful at university study. So they've explained, like, thought about what those words mean. And the good thing about this example, I think, is it's looking also at, like, I mean, I guess it's like what Leslie was saying then, is like, what does each word mean within your question? So explain is the directive verb here, but what does that mean? It means give clarity on and then explain why. So you've got to give reasons, but then you've got to think about what is an independent learner? What does it mean to be an independent learner? What does important mean? Is that things that are critical, crucial, or relevant? What does successful mean? Okay, and also the fact that it says at university level study. So that's a parameter there, is that you've got to stay away from high school study and look at university level study. So that's another idea about how you can break down your question, is definitely be looking at those words. And if you get really confused and you're still not sure what it's asking you, you can email your unit coordinator or your tutor, but don't email them saying, I don't understand the question. Email them saying, I've looked at the question, here's what I think it means, am I on the right track? So that way they know that you've had a go at it and you're not just giving them this blanket question, because they do like to be helpful, but they really like you to have a go at something first. So that's my biggest tip there, is always have a bit of a go at answering your own question before you then ask it to the tutor, but definitely ask the tutor if you're still confused. So the next thing to talk about when you're looking at starting your assignment, so you've looked at the question, the next thing to do is look at the marking rubric because that's a breakdown of the elements that you're going to be assessed on and what you need to demonstrate to achieve different grades. Every assignment will have some sort of criteria, and on our uni skills page there's also a section about marking rubric. Now I've put a fluffy cat on here, that's Fluffy the cat, because sometimes marking rubrics can be really fluffy. So sometimes it's difficult to get a hold of what they actually mean. I'm going to click to the next slide here. Now here's an example of two different rubrics. One of them, the writing rubric, that's quite detailed. The other one is a bit fluffier. And my tip here is that I had a student ask me this at a workshop a couple of weeks ago. They were they wanted to get a high distinction, right? So they were looking at the high distinction area in the marking rubric. But when you get to those really higher levels, like for example, in this one here, in the writing rubric one, you can see under exemplary in logic and organisation, it says develops ideas cogently, organises them logically with paragraphs and connects them with effective transitions. So what does cogently mean? What's effective, right? Some of those words at the higher levels are quite fluffy. If you go back to the target, it says unified and coherent. So often things like pass, credit, those sorts of marking rubric areas are really clear and straightforward. And then as you get higher up into the distinctions and the high distinctions, the language becomes a bit fluffier. So my advice is to first go for those credit type areas, because you can see clearly what's needed. And then you go, okay, well, I think that my argument is unified and coherent. So now I think, how can I develop that further? How can I make it more logical and have my transitions more effective within my writing? So you've almost got somewhere else to go. It's almost like writing a draft that ticks all the boxes that are clear, and then you need to take it to the next level rather than looking straight at the highest level, which can be really, it's quite hard to determine exactly what somebody wants. So the next step, I've got one more example there. So this was my marking rubric in our Uni Ready course that I tutored in last year. And you can see high distinction with question 1 says each section is thoughtful, detailed and accurate. And then the distinctions, it's most sections are detailed and accurate. So you're looking at the word thoughtful there to get a high distinction. So if you think it's detailed and accurate, well, then think about how you make it more thoughtful. How can you put perhaps some high level thinking in there? Did you have another question, Leslie? Or, right. Oh, okay. So the next step, which I think is really good advice, is that you essentially make yourself a checklist out of the question and the rubric. So here's an example where you've got following instructions. So that's some of those limitations and instructions that you need to follow in your assessment question. Then it's got research. So what sort of sources do you need to do? What are the parameters and the limitations around what sources you need? Then you can start looking at your rubric and saying, what do I need to demonstrate to get perhaps a credit or a distinction? And then add in there what you need to do to get that higher levels if you want to. Then as you're going through your assessment, keep referring back to your checklist. Too often students think, oh, I know what I'm doing, and they get stuck into it and they do all this work, and then towards the end they go back and look at the question and go, oh, I actually don't think I've answered that question properly, or I actually think I've been distracted. So having a checklist and referring back to it is really important. Even in creative writing, you'll be looking at what is being asked of you with this piece. Are you making sure that it's including everything that you were asked to do in that piece of creative writing? And that kind of sounds a bit limiting, but essentially at uni, you need to demonstrate what your tutor is asking you to demonstrate. So you need to keep, it's not about you just going off on a tangent and saying, I know all about this and I'm going to do this amazing thing. It's about following those academic writing rules, or about following the question that your tutor wants to see you present, follow to present the work. So just keep that in mind, no matter what sort of assessment you're doing. Have a look at the question, break it down, get the rubric, make a checklist, and keep going back to it to make sure that you're on the right track. It will save you a lot of time and heart at the end when you've done an amazing piece of work, but it doesn't actually necessarily answer the question. Okay, does anyone have any questions at this point about that? Yep, okay, I shall move on. So let's get started. Thanks, Joyce. I reckon that's I wish I had known that tip when I was at university, because I love fluffing about and writing, and I did that a few times where I did this amazing piece of work, but it didn't actually answer the question, so it was really disappointing. And you know, sometimes the tutors say, this is great, but it didn't actually answer the question, so I can't give you good marks for it. Okay, developing ideas. So we've unpacked our task and looked at our marking rubric and checklist, and now thinking about engaging with the topic. Some people can just get straight in and start writing, but a lot of other people get frightened of a white page and don't know where to begin. So it's a really good idea to just start developing your ideas. It helps keep you on track. Usually it makes things a bit more achievable. And certainly if you start with things like brainstorming, it can actually develop the basis of your assessment plan. So some of the ideas we're going to talk about are brainstorming, free writing, and test searching. So I think most people know what brainstorming is. Free writing is something that sort of helps you free up your thinking, and it's more of a written way as opposed to brainstorming, which tends to be a bit more like visual connections. And then we've got test searching, which is important to assure that there'll be enough evidence to support your assessment. So particularly if you've been given a choice of topics to write on, or if you've been asked to develop your own question, it's a good idea to do a little bit of test searching first, just to make sure that you can actually find sources and relevant articles and books and things to support your assignment. So brainstorming, I find that this is a great way to organise your thoughts, gets your ideas out of your head and stirs up new ones. And don't ever think that this writing process is linear. It's always going to be that you get started and then you might get stuck and you go back to a bit of brainstorming, go back to your checklist, and then keep going again. So there's a lot of circularity when it comes to the writing process at uni. And with brainstorming, there's no self-judging, analyse, evaluating, or criticising. So you don't want to be writing something down and go, oh, that's a stupid idea. So just write it down. It doesn't matter if it's really weird, just get it onto a page, get everything down, and then you might be able to start picking the bits out that you want. So has anyone ever tried brainstorming? Have you done that before? Do you like talking about it or writing about it or drawing your traditional lines and connections? Yep, Jodie's done it. Yep, getting your thoughts out. That's good. So lots of people are already into it, so that's good. Yeah, I like visual and oral as well. Yeah, and reflections can be good. Thinking about like, what do you already know about the topic? And Chris is saying bouncing ideas with other people. That's a really good way to go as well. When you're at uni, I'm a big believer in talking to people, but if you're talking to people who are working on the same, if you're talking to people who are working on the same assignment, you have to be careful there. So talk to other people who are like-minded but are perhaps not studying exactly what you're studying. So most of you will have done some of these brainstorming techniques before. List of ideas, write anything that comes to mind, mind maps, free writing, which is writing non-stop for a set amount of time, even if you don't know what to write. And there's also journalist questions. They're a good one too. So if you get stuck with brainstorming, just write down who, what, when, where, why, and how. And that might be a good way to get started. Yep, so Dipu does visualising and making points of writing and rearranging. You can use online tools as well, like group map and things to help get things down and then shift them around as well. So this is just another example of your classic brainstorm, using colours to draw connections between common ideas. So this person's done a big brainstorm about AI benefiting or harming humankind, and then they've started, so they've written everything down, and then they've started putting yellow boxes around the things to do with AI, underlining in green some of the benefits and underlining in red some of the potential harms. So colour coding is always a good one to go for as well. So this is another example of a brainstorming type thing. This is like a specific example called generate, sort, connect, elaborate. So you write a list, then you sort that list and do some brainstorming and connecting, and then start elaborating on some of those ideas. So free writing, that's kind of like what we call stream of consciousness, where you're writing without structure or organisation and you're exploring concepts in a free and flexible way. And as I've already mentioned, test searching. So that's just a quick initial search in the library database. So that would be the Curtin library database to see if you're able to find enough info on your topic if you need to pick your own question. So this is an example of free writing. Will AI replace humans? Fear around this, losing jobs. What will we do? What are some of the benefits? I don't know if this is enough. I don't know if this is good enough. Maybe I should Google this. Like, this is just a way of getting some words down on paper so that you don't have that white page in front of you. And then you can go back through it and pick out the ideas. So those are just a few ideas about starting to develop your ideas. And I always, because I like talking as well, I always advocate to, go to your family, say, this is my assignment. What are your ideas around this? This is my creative writing task. What are some ideas? I have to do a report on blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that? Sometimes explaining the question to people really helps you get some ideas in your own head. So, and it also means that your family or your friends are a bit more sort of supportive and understanding of your study journey. So the structure, each assignment type is going to have a different structure. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Cool, I can see that now, so that's good. So I'm back on the UniSkills website. If I go to the assignment section and writing and structure, there's, sorry, that's not the one I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to assignment writing and assignment types. Here we go. So the assignment types is under the writing tab. And you'll see there's a common list of assignments here. And if I click on one of them, it will break down what it is, and then it will give you the structure of that. So usually in a case study, there's an introduction. There's a literature review, which may not be there depending on what the assessment is, findings, discussions, conclusions, and each part gives some ideas about what you might include in that section. Okay. So if I go to essays, it's the same sort of thing. It's got different types of essays, and then some thesis statements, and then again the structure here. Often they've got common mistakes too, so check those out so that you can try and avoid those. So I think that's a really helpful. People saying in the yeah. So Jody, thanks for that. Yeah, that UniSkills, that is on the Curtin website. You can just Google Curtin UniSkills. Really, really helpful stuff on there. That's sort of the basis of a lot of what we talk about in our workshops. It's open to everybody. So if you've got kids at high school who are interested in this sort of thing, they can access it too. Everybody can access it. So I would recommend getting on there and having a bit of a look around. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing again and go back to my slides. Okay, so yes, that's a good one to go to look at the structure. So as we saw before, some people have reports, some people have case studies. There's a whole lot of different types on there. Most of those different types of assessments will have at least these 4 elements in it: an introduction, a body, a conclusion, and a reference list. And then you'll have other little sections, like, for example, in the case study, usually there's a literature review and things like that. Even if you've got a presentation, this kind of matches with that as well. Presentations would usually have an intro, a body, and a conclusion, and you'll need references for that as well. So the introduction, that sets the scene, conveys the message you'll be presenting and the specific points you'll be making. It often includes the background information, so that may be brief history or the context around what you're writing about. And it says review alongside body. So what that means is that, you don't necessarily have to write the introduction first. You might get started on the main body of your stuff, of your writing, because sometimes you just go, I don't actually really know where I'm going yet, so I'm not sure I can do the introduction. So just write the introduction after writing most of your assessment. That way it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to do these things in order. So once you've sort of really made a good plan about where you're going and you might have started writing, then, sorry, I'm just turning my phone off, then you can go back perhaps to the introduction and think about how you want to introduce what you're going to do. So the body, that's the main bulk of the word count and content. Your main points are presented and expanded. Usually we say in academic writing that each paragraph should focus on one main idea, and that in each paragraph, for each one main idea, you'll have your analysis and evidence included, and that's where you're going to incorporate. That's where you will have gone and read your resources, and you'll be paraphrasing ideas from your sources that you've read. You might be synthesizing a couple of ideas together and putting it in your own words. And within these paragraphs, that's where that writing comes into play. We have separate workshops on paraphrasing and synthesizing, and there's specific information on uni skills about that too. So if you think, what the hell is synthesizing? Go and look at uni skills, and it will tell you that it's bringing ideas together from a couple of different sources, and it will give you tips on how to do that. So specifically with a paragraph, this is a recommended structure for academic writing. In each paragraph, you'll have a point, which is the topic sentence or the main idea of the paragraph. Then you'll have some evidence, which are usually examples to support your main idea or the ideas that you're getting from the sources that you've read. You'll have something about an explanation, so analysing those ideas and those sources and how it supports your main argument or the main idea. And then finally a linking sentence at the end. And usually a linking sentence connects the ideas to the next paragraph. Sometimes it can also link those ideas back to your main idea or argument in your essay. So I'll just give an example of this, and this is a very bright slide. This is a rainbow slide. So I'd like you just to read that. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to read that paragraph and then look at the colour matching and think back to what is that topic sentence, what is the evidence, what's the explanation, and what's the link. I'll give you 2 minutes and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. Okay, so my question is, what do you think the next paragraph is going to be about? Yes, it could be about the good things AI does. Yep. So it could be either good things or bad things, because it's talking about the fact that it's not making bad decisions without human oversight. So yeah, it could be saying, here are the good decisions it makes because of human oversight, or here are the bad decisions it makes because of without human oversight. So yeah, both of those things are right, I think. Essentially it's moving on to what's going to happen if we have or we don't have human oversight. So hopefully that makes things, I quite like these colours because it really works with my brain to see these colours. But yeah, you can see that the topic sentence for this one is about that bias, the fact that Gen AI reflects the bias that already exists in human society. Then there's a paraphrased idea from the author Gonzalez, 2023, about where this bias has been seen. Then there's some discussion about like why that's important, why it matters, and what the problem might be with it. And then you've got your linking sentence. So we've gone, there's bias, here's an example of bias, why is that a bad thing? And we need to make sure, because of that, we need to make sure there's human oversight. And the next paragraph is going to be about whether human oversight is making good decisions or bad decisions. So as I say, there's a lot more about paragraph paraphrasing and synthesizing on the UniSkills site, and we also have a separate workshop about that. So if you're looking at this and thinking, holy crap, I don't know if I can write like that, then go to one of those workshops and that will help you. So something else that I sent out before, so I emailed it to everyone, but I'll email it again when I send out the slides, is this template that you can use. So you can adjust this template to fit with whatever assessment that you've got. So if you've got a case study, you might want to add another row in there about your lit review, for example. But this one is, yeah, I'll send it out again. This one is quite a good one as far as just jotting down some main ideas. And once you start your reading, jotting down where you might use those evidence and explanations. So I've got an example here of a scribbled one. So back to our topic about AI. So for this one, thanks, Michelle. I'm glad it was useful. So this one, I've got AI will ultimately harm humankind because 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 means if you look down the left, there's the idea 1, idea 2, and idea 3. And then I may have already done some reading on this or just some thinking about this, but like my first point is that it might cause job losses, and evidence that I need to find some evidence about automation and low paid labour and think about human obsolescence. And then I say, well, that negatively impacts humans, but it also negatively impacts the environment. That's my linking sentence to my second paragraph, which is about the environmental impact. So obviously I will need evidence there about the massive amounts of energy that AI uses and the fact that we need to keep mining for minerals, and then think about, you know, how I'm going to link that to my next paragraph, which is about that equity impact and the digital divide. So that's just an example of how you might use this. These are very early scribbled notes, but you can make this plan as detailed as you want. It's a really good one to, if you are using this plan, remember to put, as soon as you put ideas in it that you've read somewhere or that you have backed up from readings, put those citations in, put down the authors and the dates of those readings so that you can know where it came from and put the referencing in correctly into your final draft and put those references into your reference list as well. Okay. I'm just going to zip on so that I'm not running out of time, and then hopefully we'll have time for some questions at the end. So the conclusion, that's to me not, I mean, you know, it takes work to do a snappy conclusion, but I think most people understand what's in a conclusion, signals the paper is coming to an end, summarises your main points. Usually it restates the central argument and the significance. Depending on your assessment and the question, you might want to end with a thought-provoking or a conclusive statement, but make sure you don't include any new information that hasn't been mentioned elsewhere in your conclusion. So if you suddenly come up with a new idea that you think, oh, it'd be really good to put that in, don't put it in the conclusion. Look at your word count, see if you've got space for another paragraph, and make a new paragraph and pop it in there. Reference list, definitely the most exciting part of any assessment. That's a list of all the sources used in your assignment, remembering that you've been told probably how many sources you should use. So if you've been told to use five sources and 3 of them have to be scholarly journals, well, you should only have 5 things in your reference list, and in the bulk of your essay, you should only have those 5 things appearing after your paraphrasing and synthesizing. So again, keep checking back on your checklist as to what your parameters and limitations are for your assignment. Definitely follow your unit's referencing style. So annoyingly, everybody's different. Okay, a lot of people do the APA 7 style, but humanities, I think humanities does that one, but law does its own thing. Sometimes science and engineering uses a different style. So you really need to check in your unit what referencing style is used, because there also may be a different style used in one unit compared to another unit in the same course. Usually courses kind of stick to the one style, but it could be different. So make sure you check that. What's in the reference list doesn't count towards your overall word count. So the in-text referencing does. So when you're doing your citations after paraphrasing, that counts, but the end referencing style doesn't count. So again, if I share my screen, just making sure that's working. Okay. So I've shared my screen. So this is, if I go back to Uni Skills Home and I go over to referencing, who doesn't love exploring referencing? That's what I say. You can look at all the different referencing styles here. So if I click on APA 7, it will take me, it will tell me a bit about it. And then it will talk about how you do in-text citations. What if there's one author? What if there's 5 authors? What if there's 20 authors? What if I can't find the author? How do I reference journal articles? How do I reference books? How do I reference websites, social media, reports and grey literature? So grey literature tends to be like pamphlets and flyers and things like that. So this has all you want to see about referencing, which is great. The bad thing about it is that all the academic staff know that you have access to guides about referencing, and so if you get it wrong, they have no sympathy. So referencing is about attention to detail. So definitely go to that Uni Skills page. Nobody expects you to remember how to do referencing. I'll just make that clear. Nobody is going to say, how do I reference in APA style this book? Like, they don't expect you to remember where all the commas and the full stops are. Those guides on Uni Skills will tell you that, and you just have to follow them. So do follow them, because referencing always has a mark. It's usually like 5% or 10%. It's just attention to detail. So make the time to really check and follow those guides, and then you've picked up 5 or 10%. Okay, where am I up to? Just getting my slides back. Right, start hurrying up now. So this one's just a numbers game now. Turn your plan ideas into a plan. Calculate the rough structure by word count. Usually 10% for conclusion, 10% for introduction, 10% for conclusion, and the remaining 80% split evenly across body paragraphs. Again, if it's a different type, if it's a case study and you've got to do a lit review, look at how many marks you get for the lit review compared to some other part, and you should be able to work out the percentages of how many words you're probably going to have to do in that section. Usually paragraphs are about 250 to 400 words each. So if we had our 1500 word assignment, we're looking at 150 words for the introduction, 4 300 word paragraphs and a conclusion. So sometimes working out these numbers makes it a little less frightening. Maybe it will make it more frightening, I don't know. But for me, this makes things a bit less frightening, because I'm like, oh, I can write 4 paragraphs, I can do that. So hopefully that's helpful. This is just another example of a different type of template, where you can start with putting your assignment, question your word count and your number of paragraphs after you've worked out some of those numbers, and then start adding different paragraph boxes to keep filling up your however many paragraphs you need. And it sort of just breaks it down a little bit more, I think. Yeah, so with word counts, Dipu, there's usually a 10% leeway. So if it's a 2,000 word report, you can probably get away with 800 words or 2,200 words. So there's usually always that 10% in there. But it's a good way to keep a track of there. Hopefully everybody knows that in Word, like Microsoft Word, there's a word count button. So if you don't know where that is, Google it. How do I find out word count in Word? And you will find out how to do that. I think there's also a section on Word in Uni Skills as well if you get a bit stuck there. But if you think if it is a struggle for you, then perhaps think about breaking it down in this way and think, well, okay, well, I need like 5 300-word paragraphs, and then you'll start to get an idea of what 300 words feels like in a paragraph, and you can map out. Yeah, mostly I go over. Yep, that's my problem as well. But if you map it out first and work out how many paragraphs you need, so like I want to make 5 points. Therefore, I should probably have 5 paragraphs. And so how many words do I give to each point? Okay. There are tips about, sorry, I'll go back. There are tips about like lowering word count, you know, going in and obviously looking to see if you've explained something more than you need to. Like you really need to be quite succinct and clear in academic writing. So you don't need to explain things 2 different ways, just explain it one way well, using, you know, referencing an idea that you've read about. And also doing things like instead of using passive voice, so like the mat was sat on by the cat, you use the active voice, which is the cat sat on the mat. So that's shorter. So you can think about how you're writing it as well as what you're writing. So then you map those ideas to your plan. Go back to brainstorming if you get stuck, and just a reminder that each paragraph should probably just have one main idea. So just a quick refresher of steps that we've gone over so far. Unpack the question and the parameters. Make a checklist combining the question and the marking rubric. Do some brainstorming, have some discussions, possibly a bit of quick searching and skim reading of some sources, and then start mapping to your plan. So overall, there is a formula to academic writing. So if you follow that, using ideas, backing up your ideas with ideas that you've got from your readings, and you reference everything, you're well on your way to succeeding. So then the next steps, once you've done your planning, is then you really begin searching in earnest for literature readings, journal articles, and populating your plan, keeping a track of those citations. Yes, all of this information is on the Uni Skills website, Gerard. So if you search for Curtin Uni Skills, you'll find all this stuff. And also I'll send out the slides. Note down evidence, and by evidence, that's the citations, that's the readings that you're doing, and you're making sure that you keep those ideas referenced so you know where to find them again and how to fill out your referencing. But if you populate that entire plan with notes and ideas from readings, that's a significant portion of your assignment complete. So sometimes it's easier to get started, and then the time is reading, finding ideas, backing up ideas, and then editing and proofreading. And then obviously there's information about that on Uni Skills as well. So resources that we have available. We have workshops, obviously you found this one, so that's great. We've got lots of others. Uni Skills, so just Google Curtin Uni Skills and have a look through there. Something that's really helpful is peer academic mentoring. So those are current students who are doing really well in their studies, and they have appointments either online or face-to-face, and they can talk through things with you. They won't do your work for you. They won't answer questions on your behalf. But if you go to them with a question. So like, I don't understand this. Bye, Gerard. I don't understand this assignment question. They won't explain the question to you, but they'll talk you through the process of how to understand it. So they're about helping you learn how to learn, essentially, using their own experience as a successful student. So they're really helpful. I think they're 20-minute appointments, so they're not that long. So you need to be prepared, get your ideas together, and then go along and have a chat with them. And then you can always have follow-up appointments if you need. Sometimes they give people homework. So they talk through certain things and then they say, okay, now you need to go away and do this thing and then come back and talk me through it next week, something like that. So you can just Google Curtin Peer Academic Mentoring and go down and book an appointment. We also have Grammarly, which is an online, so they're online, Peer Academic Mentoring, so you can see them. You know, I think they have Blackboard appointments or Teams appointments. Grammarly is an online thing that Curtin students have access to, and you can use if you go and Google that, you'll be able to see that helps you with proofreading with regard to spelling and punctuation. And it will tell you where there's problems with your grammar, but it won't rewrite things for you as long as you use the Curtin version of Grammarly. So Google Curtin version of Grammarly. Because the free premium version that you can get yourself has an AI component which rewrites things for you, and that will get picked up as using AI. So you want to use the Curtin version. So you'll have these slides to follow that link. So I have 2 minutes for questions. If you need to go, feel free to go. Please give us some feedback. Let us know if we've covered stuff that you liked or if you wanted something else. And we'll also send out these slides, obviously, so you can give us feedback next week if you want. Thank you, Chris. I hope you don't crap yourself too much. So definitely go through uni skills and also make an appointment with the PAM and just talk through some of the stuff you're worried about, and they will help you with that because they've all been first-time students as well. So they're also a really good source of just general mentoring for being a student. Ooh, tips on exams, question from Hans. Exams are all so different these days. It just depends on what sort of exam it is. So that's a really big question. There is an exam section on uni skills, which might be helpful. The main tip that most people at Curtin will tell you on exams is that if you keep up with the lectures and at least skim read the readings, if you don't have time to do all the readings, that's often the case, but if you skim read just the titles and the subtitles and read the intro and the conclusion to readings and keep up regularly with the lectures and go to all the workshops. If you do everything, then you usually means that you'll be okay in the exam, because the exams can only test you on what they've told you throughout the semester. The problem with exams is that students sometimes get to exam time and they're suddenly going, oh my God, I haven't watched 5 lectures. I have to watch 5 lectures this next week and try and get that information into my head. So the biggest tip is trying to be organised with your time and make sure you watch the lectures and go to the workshops in the weeks that they're happening, because they'll all build on each other and all of that knowledge will build up towards the exam. And then you just need to do revision in the week before the exams rather than trying to actually learn all the stuff that you should have been learning through the semester. So treat it like a job and try and go to all the lectures and the workshops and get engaged in the workshops and on the discussion board, and you'll find out extra things. Thank you, Jodie. I'm glad that that was helpful. Joyce is going to start planning her essay straight away. That's very exciting. Any other questions at this stage? Thank you, Dee. Yes, they are worth a lot, Hans. I think the counselling service at Curtin runs workshops on dealing with exam stress and preparing for exams, like mentally. So check out Curtin counselling programs as well. Thanks, Michelle and Annalise. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'll just give it another moment. So I'll send out the recording on Tuesday next week, but I'll send out the slides like in a moment. Thanks, Leslie. Good luck with your assessment.